Hey everybody, welcome to our video on the Microsoft Access attachment data type. Starting with version 2007, Microsoft gave us a new data type, the attachment data type, which used compression for storing documents and images directly in our tables. Now there are plenty of people who would rather us not store documents directly in our tables, but instead to continue to store the full path, for instance, to a document and store the document itself on the file system and use the path in the database to get to that document, and that's fine. But if you would like to store documents directly in your tables, I think that the attachment data type is a better way to go than the OLE. The attachment uses compression, and it's going to make for smaller tables, as well as some of the built-in tools that Microsoft has provided for the data type. It's fairly convenient. And with the attachment data type, Microsoft went one step further and decided that they would allow us to store multiple documents on a single database record. Now they tell us not to worry that they're not actually storing multiple values in a single column like it appears, but they have normalized the storage of the data. More than likely there's a hidden table that we don't see that has multiple rows in it, which then is joined to the record that we see in the data table. So in this video we're going to explore the attachment data type. We're going to show a simple form and some of the built-in functionality that Microsoft provides. Then I've got two additional forms that provide a different view of the attachments. The first form has zero code in it at all, and the second form uses VBA to replicate the built-in functionality that Microsoft provides us. Not simply to do the replication, but because it provided a nice a framework or example of how to work with the attachments. So let's take a look at one of our example tables. I have a table here that I used in a previous video called images. And on here you can see I have 3 records. And over here we see that the first record has 3 attachments, the second one has 2 attachments, and the third record has 1 attachment. Now the form I have bound to this is a very simple form. Alright, I'm using the built-in navigation bar at the bottom here, and we're showing a single record at a time, of course. And we walk through it using the forward and backward buttons. As you can see, what I have here so let's take a look at this really quickly in design view. What we have here is 2 text boxes between the record ID and the image ID, which is nothing more than a string identifying the record. And then here we have an attachment control. Now this is a control that is specifically built to work with the attachment data type. In its default behavior, it's going to show us the first attachment that's on this record. If we click it, as you see, we get a pop-up menu over here, and we have arrows where we can move through the attachments. Now we are on the first record in the table. We can see here we have 3. Looking up here, we have 3 attachments here. So back down here, we can walk through 3 attachments like that. We can also click on the paperclip, and it gives us a pop-up dialog box here. You can see a list of the documents that are on this record. We can see all 3 of them here. And they got built-in functionality here for adding a new attachment. We can remove one. We can open an existing one. It's popping up an instance of Excel on the other screen. Let me pull it over. There we go. Let me close that, get out of the way. And we can also save the selected document to disk. We're not going to bother doing that. So I find this view a little bit limiting in that you only get to see one attachment at a time. So I thought, why not build a continuous form that allows us to see all of the documents that are attached to a record more or less in one eye shot. So let's close these guys. I'm going to open up a different table here. This attachments table is pretty much the same thing we just had. I changed the names of the columns here to be a little more generic. So what I've built here, the no code form. Let's get it down and out of the way. Get this guy up. Let's move him over here maybe. There we go. This is more like a header detail form, although not exactly, because the detail area is actually data coming from the same record that's being displayed at the top. So what we have here in terms of functionality is we can see that we have 3 attachments on this first record in the database, and here are all 3 being displayed. Nothing happens when we click on these attachment controls. We can navigate to the second record in the table. We can see all 4 documents that are attached here. We can see there's a 4 up here. On the third record we have 1 attachment. Okay, so that's, I think, a better view of what we have. Let's take a look at the design view of this form. Now what I've done, we have a form, and it is simply bound to the attachments table. So I have 3 controls at the top, 2 text controls that are bound to 2 of the columns, and this third is the attachment control that's meant for working with the attachments. Now I modified the behavior of this guy by changing the display as property over here. Now we can say display image icon, which is the default, and display the form. What you get is you can actually see what it'll show you is the first attachment on the record, and that's not what I wanted here because we're displaying the documents down here, so I had no desire to try to display any sort of image up here in this control. I wanted that control simply to get us to that pop-up dialog that allows us to work with the attachments, which is why I chose the paperclip here for display as, because it'll show us how many documents are attached while still giving us that pop-up menu. If we click on it a single time in this paperclip view, nothing happens, but if we double click on it, it'll pop up that menu, excuse me, pop up that dialog box where we can add another attachment. Let's add the info circle and close. Now something interesting here, we just added an attachment, but notice the bottom of our form did not change. We have to either provide a refresh button to make this subform requery itself, or we have to navigate off that record and navigate back on in order to see that fourth document appear. So let's take a look at the subform in design view. We'll double click on it. Notice I've got this not bound to a table but bound to a query. And before we look at the query, let's take a look at a query of our attachments table. Let's see what Microsoft shows us. I'll close that. Notice here that in our attachment column we've got 3 additional columns. Column name, the column name of the attachment column, and inside there you have a file data, a file name, and a file type. Notice the dot notation, document.filedata, .filename, and .filetype. Let's close that. We can use that in a query that we write. So our subform is bound to a query. I'm selecting the record ID from the record. We're going to need that because we need to join these. We need to join this subform, make sure that we have the right record in the subform displaying for the same record on the header. So we're providing the record ID, and then we're providing each of those 3 columns: document file data, document file name, and document file type from the same table. So this is an odd header detail type of form because, like I said, we're showing the same record up here in the parent form as we are down here. Let's back out of the subform and hit the subform container, okay, just with just a single click. And notice here that I am linking it on record ID. And that's how we're going to get away with navigating around without any code. This subform linkage here, this built-in functionality, is going to help us out. Now back in the subform, we see that I've got this set up as continuous forms, which is so that's how we get the records listed one above the other. And also one more thing to point out, I've got up here the note double click to manage the attachments. That's how we're popping up that dialog box. I have to point out that I do not have any code attached to the double click event. That was built-in functionality with the attachment control. So as far as the controls that are on the subform, we have an attachment data type here as well. Then again, 2 text box controls down here. So I'm excited that we can do this much with no code at all. So the only shortcoming I see with this form, even though it has no code, is if we just choose to add or remove a document here, you can see that the user interface itself does not update itself until we either navigate away or if I were to provide a refresh button up here. So it's cool we can do this much with no code, but I think that it's more fun to learn how to deal with the attachment data type in code, and a good way to do that is to emulate or replicate this built-in behavior over here with VBA and DAO. So that is our next form. So this guy looks pretty much similar. Again, we have what appears to be a header detail type of arrangement, loose arrangement, okay? Same text boxes up top, same similar continuous form at the bottom. What's different here though is I've added some code to display each of these images if we double click on them, and of course it pops up on my other monitor. There it is. I've got a spreadsheet here with pretty much nothing in it, but it's named tip Excel. Other functionality here, we click on add and we get a file open dialog box to add an attachment. Let's see what I don't have over here. Let's add this guy right here. And notice what I've done here. I've got a refresh built in now. Now that we're in control of this code, we weren't in control of the Microsoft pop-up dialog box. There was no place I could put code that could refresh that subform because we lost complete control when that Microsoft dialog box opened up. Our code did not wait for that dialog box to close, which is odd, which I thought was odd to me. Most dialog boxes, when they open, our code pauses and waits. But in that particular dialog box, our code ran to completion before that dialog box was ever even finished opening. So there was no place for me to attach any sort of refresh code unless I did it with a button click, which I didn't want to provide. I wanted to do it in this form. So we've got the add functionality here. We've got delete functionality here. We're going to give ourselves a check here before we do the delete. And then we also have save functionality. We can click on one of these, select on one of these, and save it. Again with the save dialog, save it to our file system. So let's look at some code. Let's look at what we do under the add button first. So this is the code window for the other forms. Notice there was no code there. I meant to show that earlier. So here is our second form. This is the header part of the form, or the parent form, if you will, the outer form. And here's our command add button. I've got two record sets in here. One for the table itself, which I'm calling RS parent, and then one for the attachment column, which I'm calling RS attachment. This is our child record set. We have to use the record set 2 when we're working with that child type record set. And I've also got a variable here to hold our query, a variable to hold our file name. We work with the file dialog box, so we got the office.file dialog here. I've got a video out there for that already. We're not going to spend much time on that because we have another video where we can talk about that. So the first thing we need to do when we want to add something is we got to ask the user, what are we going to add, right? By popping up this box. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to set f dialog equal to the file dialog, and also file dialog file picker type dialog. We got a width set up here to work with all the stuff inside the dialog. We're setting our title equal to choose the document to add to the form. I'm setting multi-select equal to false. I want them to choose one document at a time. Although you could set it to true, and then you need to have a loop in here to work with each document. And that would be kind of cool too, but not today. And I'm just giving us a initial folder to start in. If.show is true, that means if they open the dialog box, we go inside here. If the selected items count is equal to 0, meaning they didn't select anything, we want to just go ahead and get on out, exit our subroutine. However, if they did select something, we get to go down here, and we're going to loop through the selected items, even though we're only allowing them to choose one. I always use this for next loop anyway, even if I've got multi-select equal to no. It's just easy to remember that way. I just copy it in and don't have to worry about it. We're going to grab the file name from the selected item, which is here. So now string or str file name holds the file that the user wants to import. We use VBA and DAO to insert it into the table. So first we're going to get whatever record we're on the form into a record set. So here we have a record ID, right, from the record we're on. We're going to select our record from the attachment table where record ID equals the record ID that we've got displayed in that text box. We're going to open up the record set with our query. We're opening a dynaset this time, and the reason why is we're going to update this record set. So we can't do a snapshot, can't do a forward-only cursor. It's got to be either a dynaset or a table data type. And all that's going to go into the RS parent record set. We're going to test to see if we got anything back from our query. And if we didn't, we're going to tell the user we have some weird problem. We've got a record we can display, but we can't actually query, which is something really I wouldn't expect to find, but we're going to handle it just in case. If we did get a hit, we're going to put this record set in edit mode because we're about to do something to it, right? We're about to add a record to it. Then we're going to take our attachment column, which we've called document, the value of that, okay, document.value, and we're going to load it into our child record set, RS attachment. Now, the whole goal of doing this whole exercise was to add a document to this attachment column. So RS attachment.add new, and adding into the file data column, we use the load from file method, and we give it the path that we just obtained from the file dialog box. After we've done that, RS attachment update, that's our inner or our child record set, and then the outer or the parent record set, we're going to update it as well. And this is where we get the subform to update itself. Okay, we name the subform .requery. So over here, we're going to add, click add. Let's add something, a $, yeah. And there you go, $, added to the bottom. So next, let's take a look at our delete functionality. We're going to pop up a dialog box asking them, are they sure? We'll give them the name of the file so they can double check. They click no, nothing happens. If we click yes, of course, we want it to disappear. So over here on our parent form again, we have a delete button. And this code should look fairly similar. Okay, got the same parent and child record sets. Got the same file name here. We need the file name from our child record set because we need to know which child record the user wants us to delete. Over here, we got to pay attention to which one of these has been clicked. So we have clicked test doc, let's say. So right here, we're going to grab the text file name, which is here, from our subform and store it in this string. Then we're going to pop up our message box. We're using our message box as a function. Okay, we can test the value returned from it. So message box, here's the question we're asking. There's the file name being plugged in. VB question pops up that question mark right there. Oh wait. And then the next one, VB yes no, tells the message box to show the yes or no buttons only. That's VB question plus VB yes no. Here's our title. And then like I said, we're using it as a function, so if the value returned from here equals VB no, we're just going to get out of our subroutine and not do anything. Since we're only providing a yes or no, if they don't click no, it must be yes, right? And if it's yes, we're going to head on down here and perform our delete. So our top query is pretty much the same, except that I'm only selecting the document column here. From attachments, where record ID is equal to the same record ID that's being displayed on the form, so we're getting the correct record we're going to edit. We're putting it in, opening a dynaset again because we're going to edit the record set, or loading it into the RS parent record set. We're going to check our record count. If we got nothing, we've got a problem. We're going to get out. If we did get a hit, we're going to go on down to our delete code. We're going to load the contents of the document column into our child record set. We're going to check to see if we got any hits in our child record set. And if the record count is not equal to 0, we're going to go ahead and go on into our if and perform the delete. We need to find, okay, now this has gotten us, in the case of the record we're on, this has gotten us 4 rows. Okay, we have 4 rows on this first record, 4 documents in this attachment column. So if we were on the first record, we're deleting 1 document from there, this record set holds 4 rows right now. We have to find the one that the user wanted us to delete. The one the user wanted us to delete is stored in this string file name. So we're going to use the record set find first method, file name equal to, and I've got a tick mark there because that's a string column, where file name equal to string file name. If no match, we've got a problem again, right? We can see it on the form, but we can't get to it with the query. That's a weird problem. We want to display that error and get out. But if we did get a match in our else, all we got to do is rsattachment.delete. This will delete whatever row you're currently on. And then again, we're going to requery our subform. Delete. Was that what I was on? Test doc. Yep. Delete test doc. Yes. You can see the requery refreshes the display. Next, the save attachment code. Okay, we can select a document and save it to a folder somewhere. We're just going to save us in this test saves folder. Popped up a dialog telling us successful. I'm going to slide a Explorer window over here and go to the test saves folder. You can see our $ ended up in there, right where we expected it to. Now the code behind the save button is a little bit different from the other code because I have a situation here where I've got some code I wanted to share with another event on the form, and that is the double-click event of the attachment control. Boink, down there. In order to display these documents, we needed to first save them to disk somewhere so that we could use the ShellExecute API, which takes a file path as an input. So I've got a need here to do a save to file, and I also have a need here to do save to file. So I wanted to go ahead and use the same code, same basic core code to perform that save. So let's head over to our code window again. Here is our save button click. Again, we're going to start off with a file dialog. They have selected a row in the table they want to save. And now we want them to tell us what folder to save that file in. So I'm going to open up our file dialog as a file dialog folder picker this time. Give it a slightly different title. I'm still allowing multi-select equal to false. Again, I'm giving them a default folder to start in, to start saving in or start browsing in. All this code is pretty much the same. We're going to see if they selected anything. If not, we're going to get out. If they did, we're going to loop through the items. Again, we're only allowing one selection, so we'll only go through this loop, this for each next loop one time. So we get our selected item. We're going to store the folder name they chose in the variable string path. Here we're going to call a function to do our save. I've written a function called save at to file. That's save attachment to file, and it's taking several variables. It's going to take the record ID of the parent record set. It's going to take the path to save it to, and it's going to take the file name from our subform. That's the actual document itself, and this function returns a true or false. True, it successfully saved. False, it did not. So on the true condition, the true return, we've got a message box that says file saved. On a false, it's going to return some sort of error occurred. Alright, so let's take a look at this shared code. Now I put it in a public module, and the reason I did that, back over here, I've got a save attachment button up here on the parent form, and I have the other event that I wanted to use that same code in on a subform. So I decided not to put that code in a form anywhere, but instead to put it in a public module that both forms could get to easily. So our parameters going into this are the record ID of the parent table, the outer table, the file path to save to, and the file name of the document that's in our attachment record set, or our child record set. It's returning a Boolean value. And we've got similar code we've already seen. We've got a parent record set, the attachment record set, SQL as a string, and a file name. I'm going to set the value of my function equal to false at the top. So if we get out of here in some catastrophic way and don't even make it to our error code, we're still returning the right value of false. I'm going to query our attachment table and get that loaded into our parent record set. Now in this case, I am opening a snapshot. I don't need to be able to update this record set. So a snapshot is fine. Again, the same record count. Again, if we don't get a hit, we're going to go down to no doc found. And what I've got down there, no doc found, is a message box saying couldn't find it. The reason I've done this instead of embedding it right up here is I actually need to do this from 3 different places. So let's not have the same code in 3 places. Let's just have the code in one place. So the go-to will take us to here in our error area, pop-up message box. Then we go to sub exit, which is there. clear out our record set and then exit the function. If we did find the record we're looking for, the one that's being displayed on the form, we're going to load the attachment column into our child record set 2, it's RS attachment. Again, we're going to check to see if we got any hits. Did we get any rows back? If our record count is not equal to 0, we're going in here and we use the same find first method that we had before. We're going to we're looking for the file name being passed in. So RS attachment.find first, file name equals to the file name passed in. If no match, we've got some weird problem. Going to get out. If we did get a match, we need to build the full path file name we want to use when saving this file. So string file name is going to hold file path, which was passed in. That was the folder the user picked. Add a slash to it, and the file name from our child record set. So we got a folder, and then the actual file name itself being tacked onto the end of it. We're going to check to see if this file already exists. If it does, we're going to delete it and then save over it. Using RS attachment file data, save the file, and there's the file name. And if we get to here, then we're going to set the value of our function to true. True. We just successfully saved this file. Now back up to this. This might not be the assumption you want, okay? You might not want to just willy-nilly be deleting files from your customer's hard drive. In my example here, it was easy to do this. I'm not worried about it. It's just an example application. I would advise not doing this. I would advise if you find this file right here, it's probably message box time, right? This file already exists. Do you want me to delete that file? Or give them some sort of options. Either that, or perhaps you want to, if you find the file already existing, maybe you want to append some sort of number to the end. Append a number and check again. So you'd have to build some sort of loop here, right? Append a number, check. If that one exists as well, increment that number, check again, and keep going through that loop until you find a value of that file name does not exist, so you can do your save. Maybe you limit the number of times you go through that loop to 10 or something like that, and then get out with a message box or some sort of error. Anyhow, so down to here we go. We have saved our file to a folder. Everything goes well. We fall down here to our sub exit label and close our record set and set it equal to nothing. Now, one quick note here. We had 2 record sets up here. And if you want to close both, and set both to nothing, that's fine. Although I have found that setting just the outer one, closing it and setting it to nothing, also closes and destroys the child one. And I will tell you, if you close and set to nothing the outer one first, and then try to close and set the inner one second, even with this on error resume next, you will get an error and your code will stop and it will pop up the debug window for you. So if you are going to explicitly close both, close the child first, the innermost, and then close the parent, the outermost. That's it back over here. Let's say we save our temp Excel to test saves, file saved, and there we go. We've got our spreadsheet saved there. So the last one then is this display code. Double click, Excel pops up, and here is our Excel spreadsheet being displayed for us. So the thing about this is Microsoft is allowing us to store pretty much any type of document in here that we want. Right? I've got 2 images, I've got a spreadsheet. On my other record here, I've got a Word document, spreadsheet, 2 images. We have a couple ways we can go here. You can test this file type and hard code which executable you want to use to open and display that file. You can test the file type and use, I think there's a VBA shell command. I've never used it, but you have to tell it the name of the executable to use. And I'm not too into that. Microsoft has a built-in way to do this, right? The ShellExecute API will read our registry to figure out what executable to use to open a document or a file. So we're going to wander into the world of Windows APIs very briefly. Now, a lot of people don't like these. They find them ugly. I don't particularly like them myself. They can be confusing, and documentation on them can be hard to find. But as far as APIs go, the ShellExecute is one of the more benign ones. So here we define it. Declare a function, ShellExecute. Library is the name of the DLL where this function lives, the Windows DLL where this lives. You can give it an alias if you want, which to call it by. And here are all the parameters that this function takes. Now I have some code down here that calls it. But let's go back to, before we look at this code, let's take a look at, if I can find it. I'm going to have to take this guy into design mode here. Click on our subform. Look at the code in our subform. So here is our duplicate event for the attachment control. What we're going to do here is we need to save that document to a temporary location and then use the ShellExecute to open it. So I've got a hard-coded temporary folder here. This might not be the way you want to do it. You might want to store that somewhere in a table instead, but for our purposes here, let's make it simple. Hard-coded folder for a temporary storage location. I'm going to call the save add to file function we just looked at. We're not going to look at it again, but we know that if we get a true return out of this, that this file was saved into this string path, was saved into this temporary location. Then we're going to build the full path to that file name. So we got the string path, we're going to add our little slash here, and then the text file name, text box file name, that's the name of the document itself. So this holds the full path to the document that we want to then open with ShellExecute. Now I have a function here that I've built that's going to call the ShellExecute, and we'll take a look at why in just a minute. The call ShellExecute, we're going to pass to it the full path and also the folder that it's holding. And this string return is a string. Our function that I built is going to return a string to us. It's going to return either success for, well, it was successful, opening the document, or it's going to return to us an error message. So if it does not return the word success, we're going to pop up a message box and we're going to display this string message. And we'll take a look at where those come from in just a second. So back over here to ShellExecute. So here is our function, our Windows API, and all the parameters that it takes. And down here is where I'm going to call it. I'm calling it, we just called the call ShellExecute function, where we passed in the full file name and then the folder that it's going to be in. We have some constants that Microsoft's provided for us to help interpret the return code from the ShellExecute. This guy returns a string, so I'm going to set it equal to success at the top. And then if we have an error, we'll reset it down below. So here's our call to ShellExecute. Notice the first parameter it takes is the handle to our application, our access application. So application.hwind access app, that's the handle. The next parameter it takes is the operation. We want it to open the file we're giving it. The next is the file, the actual file we want it to open. That string file is the full path and file name. That LP parameters, we're not giving any parameters this time. LP directory, that's the default directory. We don't need that in this case, but we're going to pass it just to be safe. And then the show command, this is to show when it opens the document and and whatever application it needs to use. This is at the value of 1. This is show normal. The ShellExecute returns a number. So we have a long, we're going to put that in, and then we're going to test the value of that long and compare it to all these different constants. These constants tell us what type of error it had. If the return code is less than or equal to 32, we had an error. So we have a case statement here where we test the value and long return, and then we just compare it to all these various constants and provide it with whatever the error code means. And this is code. These are values that I got directly from Microsoft's website. And we're going to load these values, these error messages, into the return value of our function itself. And then we get out. Go back to our subform, again where we've tested the value being returned. If it's not success, we have a message box. If it is success, we just get out. So that's it for this video. Of course, I just noticed at the end now that I had a bizarre title at the top of my form. English having difficulty tonight with, I guess, order of. And got it corrected now. Apologize for that. My purpose for this video wasn't necessarily to build a continuous form displaying attachments, but more to give me an excuse to write the code for working with them. Anyhow, I hope that you got something out of this video. As usual, I have a link to the all the code, the VBA, in the description down below, and we'll see you next time.